Hi, and welcome to Making Music. My name is Dan Aronie, and I'll be your host for the next half hour. This show is sponsored by Guitar Showcase in San Jose, California, and I've been a member with them and a working stiff for the last 32 years. We have a very special musical guest today. This is a bass player who's played with Whitney Houston in the Bodyguard album that sold over 9 million copies. And it's probably more now. This is
22.
22 million copies now. I have it when it was 9.
I stopped at 9 too.
And he's played with Eric Clapton, Miles Davis, Brian May, Pavarotti, Bocelli, and Zucchero. And he's currently playing with the house band at the new Saddle Rack up in Fremont. And he's also a sound engineer with them, and probably more that we're going to hear about. And I want to introduce you, Polo Jones.
Yeah, how you doing, Dan?
Good. It's good. It's great to have you on this show.
Oh, well, thank you.
And what I'd really like to hear, and what people would love to know, is to get a little background. And where did it start musically for you?
Well, I grew up in Oakland, and as soon as I got old enough to get out of Oakland, I left Oakland and came to San Jose. But it first started in Oakland, and I guess the first good gig that I got was playing with John Lee Hooker.
Now, what started you in playing bass guitar rather than guitar?
That's a really good story. There was another music store that used to be in Oakland, it was very famous. It was called Leo's Music.
I remember.
Yeah, and I was going to a high school, or actually a junior high, and there was a band. They were called the Crimson Veil. And there was this guy, David Vega, who turned into David Dynamite with Graham Central Station. That was my best friend. And we both played guitars. I was into Hendrix, he was into Eric Clapton. And so I wanted to be in this band so bad, and I auditioned as a second guitar player. And there was such a conflict of styles that they said, you know what, if you started playing bass, you could be in the band. And so I went home and I took my dad and I said, please, trade in my guitar, get me a bass. And they got me a 66 P bass. And a dual Showman amplifier.
Do you still have that bass?
You don't want to know. I know you had a show just before recently about vintage instruments.
Yeah.
Well, I'm the king of the non-vintage instrument. I was into Crosby, Stills and Nash and all those earthy hippie guys. And I took that bass and I took it into my garage and I got a belt sander. I sanded off to finish. I sanded it off to finish.
That's sacrilegious.
Isn't it? And I turned it into this bass and I put all kinds of little stickers. I'm still into that, but I don't have it in so many words. But I do have some vintage instruments. I think I have 4 guitars that are worth something. I have a Flying V bass.
Yeah.
I have a BC Rich Eagle, which I don't know what that's worth at this point. I have a Gibson vintage Flaws, my father's bass, an EB3.
Yeah.
And I have a 65.
And you know, it's funny because when we're talking about bass players compared to guitar players, I think the average bass player maybe has 3 or 4 or 5 instruments.
Right.
And they just do not spend the money, and they don't do the vintage thing the way the guitar players, where the average guy that I deal with is maybe 30 to 50, and they have probably 10, 20, 30, 50 guitars.
Right.
And they just spend money like it's, there's always, what's the next one? How am I going to get it past my wife?
Well,
and I don't find that bass players just collect the way, or they,
Certain bass players do. Bobby Vega does.
Mm-hmm.
Who else? Dave Jeffries.
Dave Jeffries. Everybody in the Bay Area knows Dave Jeffries.
He told me once, I said, well, he goes, how many basses you got? I said, well, I got about 25.
Yeah.
He goes, I got 400.
And I just heard he sold most of his collection.
Yes, he did.
$650,000.
$650,000.
Yeah.
He was at my house just recently,
really?
And I was sitting there like this.
And I'm shaking my head, I know.
The whole time, And now he still has a collection of 150 or so Stingrays or Music Man.
He's a Music Man fanatic.
Yeah.
But let's get back to you.
Okay.
So we're in the band, and you're playing bass now.
And I'm playing bass now. And so the band made a record. It was called How's Your Mother, Sweetie? Which went, how's your mother, sweetie? It was one of those things, okay. And after that, I ended up in a band with Larry Graham, and it was called Hot Chocolate, and he taught me the slap style bass playing. That was the other thing.
Now, what year is this?
This is 1970.
Okay.
way back in the day.
Yeah.
And I was playing with him, and David and I left this other band to go play in this funk band. And because they needed a rock guitar player. They wanted to blend the funk and the rock together.
Yeah.
And that was my second experience that was actually doing something. And we got to actually, I was part of Graham Central Station before it turned into Graham Central Station. It was just Graham, which was spelled mysteriously
G-R-A-M. No one knows about that either.
Nobody knows about that. There was a Rolling Stone article that came out that referred to me as the other bass player.
That's kind of like the Dave Sjogren to the Doobie Brothers, the bass player
knows.
that no one knows about before Tyran came on.
Yeah. So that's what I did, and that's where I started. I started playing. Rock was my first thing. A lot of people look at me and think that I'm a funk player mostly, but rock is where it is. Jack Bruce was my idol.
But isn't Saddle Rack more country, or has it gotten away from that?
Well, our band at the Saddle Rack is the most sideways country band you'd ever want to hear. I mean, we play the gamut of from AC/DC to Bon Jovi to Bobby Brown.
So the Saddle Rack is not as much real, true country as it used to be.
For the first set, it is.
Really?
Yeah, we do Merle Haggard, and we do the traditional stuff, George Strait. And then after that, it's a concert.
Yeah.
And we just rock them as hard as we can.
Now let's go back to Graham again. So we're past there. Take us...
Okay, then after that, I started playing with this producer. He was in a band with Narada Michael Walden. He's a producer and drummer around here, played in Mahavishnu Orchestra. And he's an Italian guy, his name is Corrado Rustici.
Now, Michael Walden, he drummer, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
He actually produced the Whitney Houston stuff that I played
Okay.
on. So that's how I got that. And
So you met him and he called you, and what did they put, a group together of studio musicians to do this? Or
Well, there was-
explain, because this is a great thing. I mean, what a cool thing to be on this album.
yeah, this album actually, there's some interesting stuff about it. My position, I have some instruments here that I played on, I brought them here. We were at a party one time, and Narda said, you know, he says, you're the guy that's got all the stuff. And because I have pedals, and my name Polo is a derivative of a word in Italian called polipo, which is octopus. And I used to play pedals with not bass pedals, but you know, MIDI pedals, and played all the melodies, and I played bass.
Right.
And then if I could reach a keyboard, I'd play a keyboard line. So they started calling me Octopus. And I had all the pedals, and I usually took the bass. All my basses have been synthesized since the Oberheim days when I used to come to your store and buy Oberheim modules. And say, what are you buying those for? And I'd get the bass, and I'd put a piezo on it, and I'd run them through there because I always wanted to get those keyboard sounds off of my bass. Well, he asked me to come to the studio one day, and he said, look, and he played me the tracks, and he said, put your mess on it, because that's the way he talked to me. And I said, what kind of mess? He just said, just put your mess on it. Step on that mess and that mess, which was a whammy pedal, which was one, and an octave divider. So I started playing these little parts on the thing, and I mean, you know how Narda produces all these records, they have a bazillion things on them, you know. And he needed that one more thing to get it over the top. So I said, okay, I'll just do what I do. And I did this part with the whammy pedal. So on I'm Every Woman, you can hear this thing that happens in the front. Yeah. And then there's a little slap thing, right? And then there's which I got from Wah Wah Watson. So I did a Wah Wah Watson part, a whammy pedal part, and this little slap thing. And he says, that's it. That's what it is.
Right.
So I waited for about 3 months until the record came out, and I says he's not going to keep any of that crap, right? And he did. It's all right up front on the record. So that was fun.
Now we have some photos coming up, and I want you to describe these for us. Okay. If we can get these on the screen. Tell us about this picture right here.
That's Andrea Bocelli and me, and this is backstage in Modena, Italy, at Pavarotti and Friends, which I've done a few times. And you can see in the picture that he's kind of saying something when they snap the picture. He was asking me if I would write him a song. And I was thinking to myself, I was going like, me write you a song? Boy, wouldn't that be great, you know? And I wish I had, because he blew up like, this is right before he turned into who he is today.
And he is one of the, explain, for the people who don't know him,
he is the world's most famous opera singer to date. Pop opera. He's had done records with Celine Dion. He's done pop records. He's the biggest selling opera singer ever.
I know we have this picture right behind us, or the gold and this is presented to you. I see your name on that.
Yes.
And I see him on the bottom left on this. So tell us about this.
That's an after show thing. I just kind of stick all my, stuff that I remember stuffed on there. It's stuck on there, and that's from when he played at the Oakland Coliseum.
Okay.
And I went to see him, and he asked me again, where was the song? and you know what?
You still didn't have it?
No, I had it in my pocket, Dan. I had it in my pocket. And my friend and I, when we did the demo, it sounded like a Frank Sinatra song.
Yeah.
So I didn't give it to him.
Yeah.
And I just didn't want to be embarrassed. And he goes like, "Oh well, thanks." I didn't want to go there, so I opted not to, give him a song.
Well, let's go to the second picture
Sure.
now. Let's see what we have here.
Okay, this is at a concert. I don't remember exactly what venue, but actually it kind of looks like we're up in the air because we're above the kind of backdrop because there was a staircase. That's David Sanchez. David Sanchez has played with Sting. He's been with Seal. He's been with so many people. He was also in Santana as a keyboard player, guitar player. And he was burning Carlos every night. So they said, just play keyboards. So.
And this picture?
This picture is when I was in the Red Bank Rockers with Clarence Clemens. And that was Clarence's band outside of the Bruce Springsteen band. The guy standing right up by me, that's Gigi Gonaway. And Gigi was with Mariah Carey, and he did some clinics at your store.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah.
I was off that day.
Yeah.
I'm sorry to say. Oh, here's a great shot.
This is me with Anthony Kiedis and Woody Harrelson, and this is backstage.
Now he's Red Hot Chili Peppers, excuse me.
That's easy for you to say.
Yeah, right, I know.
The Red Hot Chili Peppers, yeah. And what happens is sometimes on the shows we always go out and do a couple of songs with all the bands, so this is prior to us going on stage on this television show to play. This is an interesting shot. If you'll notice, I've got something up to my ear. This is me with Eric Clapton and Zucchero, which is the guy that I play with a lot. And they've kind of cropped the picture because there was a story that I used to tell about me getting a phone call in the middle of this show, and there's a full orchestra. There's like a 100-piece orchestra behind us. The guy standing, he's not in the picture, but looking at us is Michael Kaman, the conductor, and Luciano Pavarotti is standing off to the other side, and my phone rings, okay? And it's my wife, and I told her to phone me because the tour had been going on so long, I wanted to go home. And they were getting ready to add another couple of shows.
That is a great shot.
And I had her call me, and yeah.
So how'd you pull that one off?
Actually, I didn't answer the phone, and Eric looked at me, and he said, "Polo, I believe that's you."
Yeah.
And I said, "Yeah, I know." And he says, well, take the call. And I did,
So I think what we're going to do now is we're going to run a video of you playing at the Royal Albert Hall in England in 2004 with Clapton and with
Paul Young
and Brian May. There's one clip on there with Brian May that is absolutely incredible, where he starts on your stage right and with one of the songs. So we'll go to that right now.
I got a message for you from our Heavenly Father. Unite for peace, love, joy, and happiness. Let it in your souls, brothers and sisters. Let it come on out. Let it come on in. Everybody knows he's there. Everybody knows that Zucchero is there. Come on, everybody. And I'm telling you right here tonight to sanctify, sanctify, sanctify your soul. Sanctify. Amen. Sanctify.
Reverendo Polo Jones.
I've got the devil in me.
Gloria dell'acqua dei cieli. Ma non c'è pace qua giù. Non ho bisogno di veri. Sei già un angelo tu che accendi un diavolo in me. Accendi un diavolo in me. Perché c'è un diavolo
Welcome back to Making Music. My name is Dan Aronie. I'm your host if you're just joining us. And right now I'd like to introduce Jeremy Epp, one of our headbanging teachers from Guitar Showcase. He specializes in heavy metal, speed metal, thrash metal,
rock.
maim and dismember metal, that is for a better word. Anyway, we have Jeremy here, and we're hoping that you guys can play a little bit for us.
Okay. So what we'll do is we'll start out, and I'll date myself. I'm going to do an intro, and then he's going to come in.
Awesome.
Little rock there. Cool. Great job. You're my man.
Thank you, Jeremy.
Went out of tune a little bit.
That's all right.
That's what it's all about.
Well, anyway, I want to talk about gear now. Since we're here, since you guys have been playing. Now, you're endorsed by several companies.
Yeah.
And let's talk about your basses first.
Okay. This one right here is a custom bass made by Peavey. I've been with Peavey for almost 20 years. And they made me a bass that was a signature series. This is the prototype of the next one. It's a flame top. It has an ebony fretboard. The cool thing about it is the preamplifier section. Is the preamplifier section on this bass I designed myself. It has a lot of mid-range, because when you're playing arenas, you need a lot of push. You need a lot of articulation. Mm-hmm. So this bass has a really boosted mid-range, somewhere around about 600
Now, how did you
cycles.
start your relationship with Peavey? How did that come about?
They actually came to me when I was playing in a band called Holiday of Hands, which was a band that was a semi-fusion band with Nard and Michael Walden and those guys. And they were doing, Walter, they were doing myself, Joaquin Liavino, all the guys that were local around here that had some kind of credentials, So they made me a bass, and that bass is on every record that I've done. I've done over 50 albums, and it's on every album that I've ever done. And it's just, producers call me and say, bring that blue bass.
Oh, that's great.
And
well,
this is
Peavey
it.
has to love that.
Yeah, they do. And the guy now, I'm working with another guy with another company that actually designed this instrument. He moved to another company, which I won't talk about right now.
No.
With both of them in the same breath. But
now, how about the white one here?
The white one.
Now, this is Peavey also.
This is Peavey also. This was made by this gentleman that had a synthesizer thing, which I talked about before. I did a lot of synthesizer work, and they came up with this design. It's actually not pitched to voltage, which it makes a big difference. If you can get a close-up of the fretboard, can you do that? Okay, you see all these little cuts in the fretboard?
I do.
Yeah,
yes.
each one of these frets is cut into 4 frets. So when you put your finger on the note, well, I'll do it down here so you can see. When you put your finger on the note, it knows what note it is already. So when you strike the note, then there's no lag time. So it's real time. It's the fastest guitar synthesizer situation. Neil Schon was using it on his synthesizer guitars. It's called fretwire. There's a computer back here in the back of the bass that actually feeds, well, the neck feeds into the computer, and the computer is actually calculating where the notes are. Not only that, they ran into problems with most synthesizers with bending notes. And they said, well, if it's fretwire, how do we bend the notes? Each one of these things in the bridge is actually bends, and this sensor right here picks up what the bend is. So when it talks to the synthesizer, rather than bend the note, or it takes the mod wheel, and it'll actually give the mod wheel a calculation of your bend. Right. So I use this all the time. I've used it on Whitney Houston's records. I use it on Nils Lofgren's records, because during that era, a lot of stuff was synth bass, you know, and I'm a better bass player than I am a keyboard player. So hence this.
So
and this little thing on the
bit of both.
A little bit of both, absolutely. What else?
How about amp?
Amp. These are my babies. I've been doing Eden for, about 9-10 years. I've been at Eden in Dorsey. I used 2 WT-800s on tour in Iraq. These are smaller because we didn't have room to bring anything else. I was contacted by a guy that called me up and said, I need you to come down and listen to some stuff I'm building. And his name was Mark Wright, and he owns this company called Accugroove. And what he was trying to do is come up with...
And this is a local guy, too. This is Cupertino.
This is Cupertino.
Right.
And Mark Wright's stuff, I have 2, they're called an El Guapo. And when I walked in to look at these cabinets, he had a bunch of little boxes. You know what I mean? Just little boxes. And I said, well, okay, that one's a little bit small for a bass amp. And he said, no, it's modular. So the thing about these cabinets is they're a bunch of little speaker cabinets all put into one box. And the reason that they do that is so that none of these ventings and any of these tunings share the same air. So if you've got a small speaker and this speaker, they're not sharing the same baffling at all. So you get like a PA stack. So you got a subwoofer, you got a mid-range, and you got your high-end. So nothing just kind of cancels each other out. So these cabinets get way louder than any other cabinet out there.
Well, I remember you came to me, and this is like 2 or 3 years ago, and it was you and Wally Malone and Myron Dove, and you said, you guys got to carry this. This is at Guitar Showcase. Yeah. And you guys got to get this gear in here. It just sounds great. And I mean, you and Wally, and I mean, these are some of the premier bass players in the Bay Area.
Yeah.
And they're all saying the same thing, get Accugroove cabinets in there.
Yeah. I mean, you know, it took me a while because I was using big stacks of stuff. I still, you know, because it's such big places that I used to play. And I used the 410s, the Eden 410s on top of them for a whole tour. Yeah. And my tech was going, you know, yeah, let's do this. And I came back and Myron Dove came in and plugged into my stuff at the Tsunami Relief concert I had that you guys backed, right? And I had the 410s. And Myron goes, turn off the 410s. And I said, well, turn off the 410s, man, that's the top end. He goes, no, man, I don't need it. And he took and he turned up the treble on the head and he EQ'd for the cabinets and they blew away my whole rig. My 2 Accugroove cabinets killed everything that was there that day. And from then on, I've never brought the 410s out.
And that's what Mark talked about. He was a discouraged bass player who could never find a good cabinet, and this is why he said, I'm going to go out and make my own, you know, start my own company because I can't stand the bass cabinets that are on the market right now.
These things sound like Bill Dickens was playing the Bill Dickens model at the NAMM show, and I was in the room and I had my computer in the room at Dean Markley, and literally there was so much sound pressure off the bass it broke my computer. And he owes, Bill, you owe me a computer.
Anyway. And then of course you have your bass back here. Then I'm assuming you use that for.
Okay, I'd like to talk about this.
Now we only got a couple minutes, so.
Okay, real quickly. I've been what I do is I go to your store and I buy cheap basses because when I tour with the basses, I don't want something that is I'm gonna miss if it falls, because you know when you transport your stuff, it gets broken. So what I do is I buy a bass and I strip everything out of it. I strip the pickups out, I strip this, I strip the preamplifiers out, take off the headstock, I change the tuners, and then I have somebody build me a bass out of stuff that's off the shelf. And that's what I do. So if something happens to the bass, I know exactly what it had. I go get another bass, I take off everything, and I put all the stuff back in, and then I got a bass that I like. You know, they'll never be worth anything on the market unless my DNA is worth anything, which I don't know if it is or not.
Well, I think considering the people that you've played with, absolutely. It's what a treat to see the tape. Again, going back to the Zucchero tape, at the Royal Albert Hall, I was absolutely mesmerized by that concert, and a lot of people in the United States don't even know about him.
Well, he's been selling real big at Starbucks. This is the album. Can we get that?
Yeah. And I also wanted to show this. This is the tape I reviewed the other day. If you get a chance to look at this one, this is just a great DVD. And Paul plays bass throughout the whole
with
tape.
all these guys. And this record has Sting.
Show them that again.
This one again. Here we go. Is that good? All righty. And this has Sheryl Crow, Sting, Eric Clapton, Macy Gray, Miles Davis, B.B. King, Andrea Bocelli, Luciano Pavarotti, John Lee Hooker. We were the last people to work with John Lee Hooker. He passed away right after. I hope that doesn't have anything to say about our thing here.
Anyway, I want to thank you for joining us today.
Dan.
This has been absolutely a treat for me.
Okay, well, thank you very much. It's been a treat for me too.
Thanks.
So,
and I just want to thank you for joining us today. It's been great having you, and we'll be seeing you very shortly. I am next week.